Ladies and gentlemen, we're back. Marathon Money is inside the ticker. Man, I'm here with another pure play uranium. Am I correct, Keith? Keith is the CEO, and we all know in the next 4 to 6, 7, 8 months, uranium is probably going to be the biggest thing with the AI data centers coming along, all these energies. And so I know he's probably going to be the specialist on this. And I think this is an actual real deal company that people needs to really take a look at. So Keith, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, great to be on here, Kenny. And yeah, I agree with your sentiment there that it is early innings of what's going to be a long-term uranium bull market. And I think what you're seeing is a bifurcation in the uranium space itself. And, Canada is sitting there at the top of really the opportunity. And that's really based on the fact that they have an area called the Athabasca Basin in Saskatchewan, Canada, that's home to the highest grade and best uranium mines and deposits in the world. And so that's where our team is exploring. That's where we're active. And, as people say, it's kind of becoming the Saudi Arabia of uranium, as you would say, just because of how rich and how well endowed it is with uranium. So our focus is there. And, our team, Cosa Resources is a somewhat newer story, but our team has really been responsible for a lot of success in this part of the world through making discoveries, being involved with NextGen, IsoEnergy, Denison. These are all billion-dollar companies that started off like Cosa, and we're looking to do it again here with Cosa Resources.
So I like when you said it's like the Saudi Arabia uranium. Like if people don't know, how powerful is uranium and how big is it going to be according to you and your plans, that where people's going to really start taking notice in the next year or two?
Yeah, so I think you touched on it, right? The AI data centers, and what you're seeing is a lot of push in jurisdictions that weren't previously using nuclear power, and countries that are building these nuclear power plants. There's something called small modular reactors, which are smaller versions of these nuclear power plants that are being built everywhere. And interestingly enough, we go to the WNA every year, which is just a world nuclear conference that happens in London, and Microsoft is there now, Amazon, and all these people, all these huge companies like that are really focused on learning about nuclear power and learning about uranium, which supplies nuclear power. And we're really in an unprecedented time where, as we currently sit today, the current supply cannot meet the current demand. And when you put in all these extra layers of demand that's coming through, the supply is not going to keep up. And what that creates is upward pressure on the uranium price that could send it parabolic here in the short term, and which really bodes well for companies like us that are actively exploring for uranium, because, the rising tides will lift all ships in that kind of scenario. And, we've gone through that before in the mid 2000s where, small companies also became hundreds of millions of dollars worth of value overnight just based on the uranium price. And, it's setting up to a similar scenario here, but I think a more long-standing, or one with a lot more runway this time in uranium, because of the increased demand that really wasn't accounted for probably 10 years ago, just with the push towards AI, really left side, right side of the aisle, all understanding that nuclear power is a great option. And people are going forward with developing these nuclear power plants, and that puts a lot of pressure on the supply side for companies looking to supply uranium.
Now, let's talk about like what you have now as uranium to prepare what's coming. It's like, you feel like your company's in a good position to take advantage of what's coming?
Yeah, for sure. And so we're an exploration company, meaning that we're pre-discovery of this uranium. And the reason we go to the Athabasca Basin, which is that area in Canada I talked about, which is a very geologically unique area, one of the most unique areas on the planet for uranium, is, for perspective, the average grade of a uranium mine or deposit outside of that area is 0.2% uranium. So you pick up a rock in one of those mines, and 0.2% of that is uranium. In the Athabasca Basin, a deposit that our group found during our time at our last company, IsoEnergy, the average grade of that deposit was 35% uranium. So 0.2% versus 35% uranium. Majority of that uranium deposit itself was over 50% uranium. So it's some of the most valuable rock on the planet based on that. And so our our company is looking to make another discovery like that. And what happened during our last company at ISO Energy, when we made that discovery, we went from 30 cents to over $6 in under 18 months in a bad uranium market. It wasn't even had strong fundamentals behind us. So it just goes to show how valuable.
So you're telling me you did this already. I just want to sorry.
Yeah.
You tell me you did this already, and you already have success in this.
In this uranium space, we do. And COSA is a new company, and we're looking to do it again. So we have a blueprint work where, and it's not just me, right? There's a whole team behind me that's been part of this success, and a whole team working with me. And we've had success. And Craig Perry, another member of our group, was a founder of NextGen. NextGen, is about a $7 billion company now.
Yeah, I know NextGen. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. And so it's one of those things where we're a group that's been part of multiple discoveries in this part of the world, and we're looking to do it again. And kind of the first time in my career, it's actually looks to be a strong uranium market. And so we've created value even in tough uranium markets.
That if you can create value in a bad economy, I can't imagine what you're doing when everything's going right.
Yeah, and we're looking to do it again, right? We're a team that loves working together. We're obsessed with making these discoveries. I have a technical team like my VPX Andy Carmichael that would run through a wall to make another discovery. We just love it. We're built for this, and so we're looking to do it again with this company, Cosa Resources.
So the land that you have right now, is it from what I've read, and then correct me if I'm wrong, is it like 100% yours, the company's?
So we have a portfolio that a large portion of it is 100% owned by us, and then we also have multiple joint ventures where we own a 70% interest, and then Denison Mines owns a 30% interest. And Denison Mines is another large, uranium development company. It's listed on the New York Stock Exchange, a couple $1 billion valuation, and so they're our joint venture partners. They're also our largest shareholders, and the projects we got from them, we just acquired in January of this year, closed that transaction, and they are phenomenal. I spent 9 years working at Denison. I had the privilege of working on their discoveries alongside a terrific team. So we knew the Denison Mines team very well, and we also knew those projects very well. And so we identified an opportunity where we could acquire 70% interest in those projects, and in return, Denison became our largest shareholder. And they maintained a 30% interest in those projects. So, we operate all of our projects, and we're in control of the majority of them.
With them being your biggest collaborator, one of your biggest collaborators, does that accelerate what you guys are doing?
Yeah, definitely. I think the reality is the Athabasca Basin, it's not a hidden gem. Everybody's in that area. Everybody understands the potential, for some of the most significant uranium discoveries in the world happen in that area. And so it's highly competitive to get good projects or good land in that area. And so really there's a portion of it in the eastern side of it where all the current mines are, where all the current mills are. It's where Cameco operates, Denison's there, Orano, which is the French government. And so it's very hard to get land in that area. And so we were able to gain access, really through this transaction with Denison Mines. And, it's more than that. Obviously, it's a headline, to get a terrific shareholder like Denison, but they're just good strategic collaborators and partners with us. And, like I said, I worked there for 9 years, so there's a long-standing relationship. So the projects we got from them, our group knew we're very familiar with them. And so we like to call them discovery ready. Each time we head out and drill, there's an opportunity for us to make a discovery on these projects. And Denison understood the value in them. They weren't going to get to them because they're busy trying to build a mine down at their Phoenix deposit. And that's why they wanted to maintain exposure to these projects, maintain a 30% interest in the projects, but also, a 19.9% interest in us as a company. And so, yes, I think it definitely sped up our timeline. We were able to get land that good in that good of an area with our transaction with Denison.
When I started really hearing about uranium and what it's going to do for the future and how to take part, I know you guys are more of just like the resource company, but is there a play to really start moving it out into? Because I know sometimes companies like yours, they start getting into the point where they start trying to acquire customers, try to extend that play because they end up having the opportunity to get more uranium than anybody else. Is that something that's in your future? Or are you guys going to strictly just be a resource company and give that value to the shareholders?
I think at this point, I mean, when you set up these companies, you do want to play to your skill set. And our skill set is finding uranium in that part of the world. And so we set up this company to do that again. We have a blueprint that's worked for us in multiple companies. And so for us to veer, we're always open to different acquisitions, different, merger ideas. We definitely, we run this thing like a twin engine plane, right? One of its exploration looking for uranium, and the other engine is mergers and acquisitions and different ideas like that. You don't like to rely on one engine. And so, so we're definitely always open to stuff, but we have built this thing to play to our skill set. We're perfectly built to look and hopefully make discoveries of uranium. And so as it currently sits, we'll look to work to our skill set. But we're always open to different ideas if there's value to be had, for sure.
What other projects you guys are like working on that maybe other people don't really, they're not really highlighted like uranium is highlighted for you? You know what I mean? Or is there more projects in the uranium space that we as investors don't know that could be beneficial for us to take a look at and be aware of?
So I think just kind of taking a broader approach here, what's happening in the uranium market is, a lot of the bigger names, a lot of the actual mining companies, the ones that are producing uranium, are at all-time highs. Their value has already started to go up a significant amount. You see the next level, which is development companies like NextGen's, Denison's. They're approaching all-time highs too. And what you haven't seen yet is that sub 50 million valuations. Companies like Cosa, they have not caught that same capital bid yet. And when you take a step back, this is how it works in a bull market, right? The capital eventually trickles down. And so, if people are worried, okay, look at a Cameco or other stuff, they're at all-time highs. Have we missed this uranium bull market? You have not. It's early days. And it's actually those sub $50 million companies that are going to start to play catch up here. We saw it in the gold space, right? 12 months ago, everybody's like, it's broken for the small companies. They'll never be able to raise money. It's never going to work. 12 months later, you're seeing all those companies be able to raise $20 million. Their valuations are going through the roof. And so I think uranium's in a similar scenario where a company like us, haven't caught the tailwinds yet, which is what you expect in a bull market. It starts off and works its way down. But, that's where the real opportunity is for investors, is as these smaller companies play catch up, which happens, every bull market. There's going to be a lot of tailwinds in our space. So we are focused on uranium. It's good for us to be narrowly focused on that at this point in time, because we believe in what's happening in the uranium space. And we know that companies like us are going to catch a bid here and really increase in value and, play to our strengths. Pure play uranium company. It's what we should be built to do.
I do see like other projects you guys have executed.
Yeah.
What I mean? Can we talk about some of those and how they went and how you guys executed them to get an idea of how this is going to go for the future?
Yeah. So certainly. So a good way to think about how you make discoveries in uranium, or how you find uranium, is that, locally, these things are hard to find. They're quite elusive. They're very high grade, but they're elusive. But regionally,
why are the uranium hard to find?
It's it's buried under a sedimentary rock. Usually, it could be a couple 400 meters, or like 1,000 feet down. It's somewhat hidden in that sense, and it's also not huge, right? You'll get some of like the Phoenix deposit, which underpins Denison's couple $1 billion valuation. It's only about 500, 600 feet long, but it's so high grade and so intense that it creates all that value for that company. And so they are difficult to find in that regard because of the small footprint of them. But a group like us, who's been a part of multiple discoveries through multiple companies, I think does have an advantage in the sense that we can kind of know, hopefully, when we're close to something, but also more importantly, when we're not. and get the heck out of there, right? Because you don't want to be wasting your money, and all your drill meters if you're not going to be near something. And so, yeah, they are elusive. I think when you look back, last 15 or so years in the Athabasca Basin, there's only been a certain amount of discoveries, and fortunately, our team has been a part of a lot of those. And so, I think we're equipped to do that again here with Cosa Resources. And the way we've set up our projects, kind of coming back to that, is the best place to be looking for uranium is buy uranium, right? We've gotten all these projects that are right next to the current mines, like Cigar Lake. Our Darby project butts right up to Cigar Lake, which is Cameco. It's the largest uranium mine in the world. And so we've managed to strategically acquire ground that's right next to major deposits, and it has the same geological trend. And so it's almost that string of pearls where you can have deposits going along that same trend. And so that's how we've set up, because like I said, locally it's hard to find, but regionally there can be a pattern to these things. And so you set yourself up regionally, then locally you really lean on your experience to know, hopefully, when you're getting close to something, or ultimately if you're not, and getting out of there and focusing on a new area.
So that's how you guys are able to complete those other projects, because you guys have a particular system that kind of teaches you as you go, and you can tell if you're further away from where you need to be, and then also tells you if you're really, really close.
And it's that pipeline of targets that, we're not a one trick operation, right? We're not going to have our one thesis. If that doesn't work, we're kind of putting our hands up, right? You have a pipeline of targets, you have multiple projects that are ready to go, because that's what you need to do. You need to be kind of nimble. You need to be able to adapt and move to your different target area, because like I said, if it's not showing what you want, get out of there and move on to your next target area, because we only need to make one discovery, right? Like that's the beauty of the valuation of these companies, right? You need to make that one discovery, and then all of a sudden your life has changed, because you're a $500 billion company in a short amount of time. And so we've always taken that approach, that recipe, if you will, of having multiple targets, having multiple projects that are ready to go. You have your checklist of what you're looking for in these targets, but sometimes it doesn't work. It's exploration. It's the ultimate treasure hunt. And so we've applied that formula multiple times. It's worked for us. There's no guarantees in uranium exploration, but how we offset that is to be ready with 1A, 1B, 1C, just ready to go with our next targets, really focused on putting our capital towards making those discoveries. And that's been very successful for us in the past with that approach.
It seems like the team you have is very key here.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'm the person, like I'm the person talking to you here, but top to bottom, left to right, however you look at it, I've been fortunate to be part of a lot of success, through Denison, ISO. We've had Craig Perry, who is next gen ISO, like a lot of these great stories in the uranium space. And I think this is the best version of the team I've been a part of. And, we understand what our strengths are in this team, and, having, even our board, Steve Blower, our chairman, is one of the best, geologists in the uranium space as far as making discoveries. He's been a part of multiple discoveries himself. And so the team is everything, because especially in exploration, the assets or the projects will come and go. You'll flip through them, but the team will find that right one eventually, right? And you have to be ready to bring on new stuff, look at different acquisitions, and that team is everything. And when we worked at ISO, our share price obviously went from 30 cents to $6. We made some money, and we've put this back into Cosa Resources, right? A lot of us, we're continuing to cut checks and participate in this company because we believe in what we're doing, and the whole team is putting in money because we're kind of in this together to build this into that next monster.
What is the Hurricane style?
So Hurricane is the name of the deposit that our group found during our time when we used to work at a company called ISO Energy. That's the one I keep mentioning, that it went from about 30 cents to $6 for 18 months. And so the Hurricane deposit is an unconformity style uranium deposit, which is the same as Denison's Phoenix. It's the same as Cameco's Cigar Lake, McArthur River. Hurricane is the highest grade uranium resource in the world. It's just around 50 million pounds, average grade of 34.5% uranium. And that's an interesting story. I was corporate development for that company. It's really, Steve, Andy, and Justin, who are all members of the COSA team, who ultimately made that discovery. And it's one where, like I said, the footprint of the uranium itself is quite small. This deposit is only about 125 meters long. But what happens in and around these deposits, because it requires a whole bunch of fluid to make these, is you get what we call an alteration halo. The sedimentary rock, which is above where this uranium deposit is, sedimentary rock, which you call sandstone. Usually it's kind of pristine, that's perfectly intact. It's this purple color. But in and around these deposits, there's so much fluid flow going through there that it removes this purple color. It causes that sedimentary rock to be destroyed, sometimes loose sand, sometimes just broken. And so these alteration halos in and around these deposits, can be, say, a mile long or a couple kilometers long. And so when you're drilling, usually what happens is you find this alteration zone first, and then you hopefully can vector towards where that main uranium deposit is. And, Hurricane's an interesting story in the sense that the project was bought off Cameco. The team was drilling at a different project, and the targets were good, but the results weren't really what they were looking for. So they flew the drill up to the Rockies project where the Hurricane deposit is, and with the very first hole, they actually hit the Hurricane deposit. And it kind of goes back to our recipe there, where if the results aren't showing what you want, don't keep staying in that area. Be ready to move. And that's what Steve, Andy, and Justin, they did that. And that ultimately led to the discovery of what's currently the highest grade uranium deposit in the world. And so that's why I think I keep trying to almost labor that continue to be ready to move and be ready to have those next pipeline of projects, because you never know exactly where you can ultimately make that discovery. But it's worked for us in the past.
So I want to, before I ask you the famous last question of the show that everybody always wants me to ask, let me fully understand. You guys are a pure uranium play. You have a team that has done this not once, not twice, but multiple times. You guys have took where share price was at 30 cents up to $6, and you guys are basically back here to do it again. You guys are at the edge. You guys are on top of this bull market, and then pretty much in the next 6 to 8 months, it's probably going to teeter over, because AI data centers are coming out, and they need energy, and uranium is perfect for it.
Yeah.
So what should investors look for in the next, something at the end of the year, next 2-3 quarters? What should we be looking for from Costa?
Yeah, so I think our focus is on drilling, drill, and we'll be drilling again here in the next couple of months. Really, January, we'll have the drill turning again, and anytime you're drilling in that part of the world, that next drill hole could ultimately be that discovery, and we set ourselves up so we have a belief in every target that we're going to drill there that it could ultimately make a discovery. And if I see the team's belief is reducing, then it's time for us to get another project and be ready so that their belief can, still be as strong with the next target. And so drill. And that's the biggest catalyst for us. And I think I touched on this before, we're kind of in that unique position with our valuation where it hasn't caught a bid yet in the uranium space. So I think you're starting to see tailwinds that could catch a company like us. And when you factor in that we'll be drilling, as much as we can in the next 6 to 9 to 12 months, that's a huge catalyst and a huge opportunity for shareholders to want to get in, ahead of that, because, next time you could potentially hit something with that drill hole, it could change your company overnight. So when we were at ISO, when we went from that 30 cents to $6, that was a pre-resource. It's not like we were building a mine, right? This was just us poking holes into this new uranium discovery, right? So nobody even had any idea how big it was, and the share price still reacted that way. And so that's what happens in this space, and it's fun to be a part of it. And we're looking to do that again with COSA. And the biggest thing for us is just drill as much as we can.
What criteria is this the last question? I know I said, but this thing about my mind. What criteria determine where you drill? what exactly you as a leader tells you? I know you got a team and probably the
Yeah.
team, you got to run through the whole criteria with the team, but like what tells you like this is our next spot?
So, I mean, I think I am a geologist background myself also.
Yeah.
I do have a team around me, and we also have, a strategic relationship with Denison Mines, who's also made multiple discoveries. And so, we do have meetings where we get aligned on the target areas, and it's really just layering in as much data as you can, and applying that recipe of, okay, we saw this close to hurricane, which is obviously ISO Energy's or Denison team or myself. I worked at Denison. This looks like it was close to what happened at Phoenix, which is their main deposit. And so you kind of put your heads together and recreate these scenarios where it's like, okay, this is why this could be here, based on geophysical targeting, based on what we call geochemistry, the chemistry of the rock, based on space, based on location relative. So there's a lot of layers, and there's no silver bullet. And that's what you have to understand too. So you bring on all these layers and you follow the evidence and you follow your experience, like I said, to say, okay, this could be here based on this, this, and this. This is stronger based on because it has, 4 or 5 things. And then also understanding that if the evidence is showing it's not there, then it's time to go to a different area. And so, yeah, it's fascinating, really watching my team, obviously with Andy, just the amount of experience they have, and the amount of information they bring together to really identify these targets, and they're obsessed with it. They love it. And so I can't tell you one thing honestly, because there's so many things that are moving in the background to why you pick these targets, and that's ultimately why it's not easy.
I feel like this is probably the first time I actually truly understand how this whole drilling, discovery, uranium, gold, titanium, all
Yeah.
these resources companies are actually like have a full like grasp
Yeah.
of it. And I think a lot of retail investors like struggle with that. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's what keeps like it from it. But like you made it really simple to understand. And like you guys, then the good thing that makes me feel really good is that you guys done this before and you guys been successful before. And that holds a lot of weight because you guys know what you guys are doing. So
Yeah. No,
any,
appreciate that. Yeah.
yeah. Anything you guys want to say before we get off?
Just that, we're the ultimate treasure hunters. We love this. We're built to do this, and we're looking to do it again here in as short as we can, in short order.
Hey, guys, this is Marathon Money Inside the Ticker. Thank you so much. Check them out. Honestly, I think you guys are extremely undervalued. They got something going here. They've done it before, and they're more likely to do it again. That's how success rolls. Peace.
Thanks, Kenny.